Hello everybody, welcome back to Dominions 5. We've just finished talking a lot about Tartarians and the late game, but I wanted to talk about the mid game. We just had to go on that little detour to make sure that we were on track in terms of what our objectives were, and specifically I was talking about globals. Let's talk a bit more about globals. So in the mid game is typically when the first globals go up. As Tien, what globals would we like to put up is the question. And that is related to what we're going to research. So let's talk quickly about that. So the first global that tends to go typically is Mother Oak. Because it's really low down here in Alteration 5. It only costs 50 nature gems. It does take nature 5. We don't have huge nature paths. We are kind of relying on our pretender god to do most of the global casting for us. But we only had nature 3 on him, so we would need to build a thistle mace, and we need construction 6. So for us, and now we really want nature. We really want nature, and we don't have it. So, unfortunately, Tien does not have native nature gems, and nature gems are always in demand. So, it would be really nice to put Mother Oak up. Unfortunately, my current build doesn't allow us to do that easily. I would have to have nature 4 in my pretender to be able to cast Mother Oak early with just a Thistle Mace. But that still means, another nation like Pangea, they can just rush Alteration 5 and cast it, right? And I can't beat that because they're going to have a Nature 5 natively. Even Man can pull that off, right? Tien can't hope to win that race. So although it's a nice thing to get, you're not going to win the race. I think the great targets are in Enchantment. And that is because both Enchantment... Let's talk about Enchantment and Alteration. In the mid-game, we're fighting a war. Here we're fighting against Mictlan, but whoever you're fighting, okay? By now you've filled out all the level 4, maybe level 5, all the tech paths to level 4 or level 5, right? Let's do a quick overview, right? We got level 4 for sure because we wanted to have Light of the Northern Star. And Strength of Gaia is a great buff to get on all of your communion slaves. Conjuration 5, it brings you Howl, which is a great battlefield spell. Plus you get, in our case, we didn't need the things like Naiads, right? There are some good summons in here. We're okay in terms of our army, in terms of our units. Our recruitable armies are good enough. But we do have better elementals to use in battle here. The full-sized elementals, specifically air elementals, are very, very strong. So Conjuration 5 is definitely worth getting fairly early on. Do we need to go further down in Conjuration for a mid-game war as Tien? Probably not. We're not super reliant on these summons, so we don't really need it for the army. There are these thugs, right? The Sea King's Court, the Troll King's Court. Unless you're fighting sort of an amphibious war where you need to get some underwater access, in that case, maybe Sea King's Court would be worth it. Otherwise, we're kind of okay. Mid-game wars are going to be won with, armies with great mage support. Some nations who have thugs can play that up, right? Some nations who have raiders and thugs just as part of their nation can use that, but you don't need that to win a mid-game war, especially as a human nation. Like, we can raid fine with our cavalry, so we don't really need to push further in Conjuration at this time. If you did push further in, how would you benefit? Maybe you'd be spamming some elementals if that was relevant against the opponent you were fighting. Did you do it to get some elemental royalty? So you are trying to get some super combatants out in there. as Tianqi, we don't need this to cast any spells, right? We can cast all the spells that we need, so this is not really a big priority. Fairy Court is classically something you can get to help you cast your air spells easier, but we've got air mages that can communion. In fact, we have in this game, we even have these folks, Silver Order mages, so we got air covered. So in terms of the mid-game, Tianqi does not really need to focus on Conjuration that much. Yeah, we do want to get Conjuration 9 for Tartarians at some point, but that might be one of the last things we get up to Conjuration. We get up to level 9. Similarly, Construction, you definitely want to get to Construction 6 fairly early on, because we can craft all sorts of things. Speaking of which, I haven't mentioned this, but there's a couple of items that we can craft here that are unique to Tianqi, and they're really good. So one of these items is the Armor of 5 Elements. It's available at Construction 2, which is amazing. This is a truly amazing piece of armor. It is, first of all, super cheap to make with a hammer. It only costs 1 air and 1 earth. You need the air-earth cross path, but you end up with that on all sorts of your mages, so it's not an issue. 17 protection for 2 encumbrance, totally respectable. You know, the classic armor that you mass produce is the Armor of Knights, which is 23 protection, which is admittedly better. But we have magic resistance and fire shock cold resistance. This is amazing, guys. This is a really, really good piece of armor. It's super cheap. You can mass produce it, put them on all your commanders. Honestly, even mages, because we're running communions. We don't care about fatigue so much. And this is really going to help you, for one thing, it helps protect in the late game against things like fires from the sky. We're going to do like a whole episode on that, so not to worry. Just amazing. Like, it shores up your resistances, your resist vulnerabilities really easily. Just a great, great item. Another really good item that we also have at Construction 2 is the Sword of the 5 Elements. Now, this one is water fire, but we can also we also have enough water fire guys, like our cat mages can do it easily. And in addition to being like just a nifty sword, it doesn't have an area attack, but it's got 3 attack and 4 defense, so that's great. It has Reinvigoration 2. So this is a 2-gem item with a hammer, right? It's only going to cost 1 fire and 1 water. And you get extra Reinvigoration on your mages where you normally cannot get it, because Reinvig items are boots, and in miscellaneous you get some, right? So how do you get Reinvig? You get it with Boots of the Messenger, Reinvig 3. You get it with a Girdle of Might, which is Reinvig 3. I mean, there are some other items here, but that's the classic one. And you can also do it with Rainbow Armor here, which gives you Reinvig 3 as well. But this gives it to you in your weapon slot, which is pretty unique. So this is a really cool item. We also have we have a rebate on Jade Armor, I think, which is an armor that gives you quickness but a ton of encumbrance, which is not that amazing. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that because I was talking about Construction. So in Construction, you definitely need to get to Construction 6 because there are a lot of boosters that you're going to start wanting to build in the mid-game. So that's certainly going to be one of your priorities. Now, do you need to go further? Construction 3 already gave you Legions of Steel. The question is, do you need Weapons of Sharpness? So that's going to depend on... and I just realized golems. I totally forgot to talk about golems in the last episode. So we are going to fix that right now. But let's address Weapons of Sharpness. So Weapons of Sharpness is definitely going to be a priority if you are fighting against an opponent who has high protection. It's as simple as that. It is very powerful. In this case, I was fighting against Micklin, who have 0 armor on all of their guys. So Weapons of Sharpness is completely useless. I did not need to go for this. Let's completely pause this discussion of research paths and talk about golems, which I completely forgot to talk about in the last episode when I was talking about thugs. I was talking about death and I was talking about blood, but the huge one that I missed, and I just slipped my mind, and I don't know why, because I've been playing games that involve a ton of golems recently, are the golems themselves. So we have Earth Astral access. Golems are totally a thing that we can build. So really, Tien does have access to thugs in that they can do golems. However, and actually, people expect Tien to be using a lot of golems. So golems are 30 astral gems, and here's the thing. I find that there's a lot of competition for astral gems. Like, astral gems are pretty important. They're pretty useful, and this is not something that I kind of successfully navigated in this game, but in the very late game, you do want to look at some globals like Arcane Nexus, or, you do want to wish. You need to empower. Like, there's a whole chain of events that needs to occur if you want to go for some sort of late game domination in terms of globals and in terms of gem income. And that requires a ton of astral gems. And the more you're spending on golems, the less you're going to have available for that. Now, that being said, so I could have gone for golems, right? Golems are construction 7. That is definitely something that you can go for. I find that golems are, the thing that they do best is they're good to counter raiders. Because the thing that golems do that other thugs don't necessarily do is they can magic phase attack because they're astral. Well, that's the other thing. Golems, yeah, they cost 30 astral, but then you always have to give them the Starshine Skullcap, which is another 10 astral. So don't forget that. So it's kind of 40 astral gems. So to me, the value added of golems is that they're magic phase thugs, right? And so what golems are great at is, if, let's say, you're being elfed, okay? If somebody is raiding you, then you want to use golems to magic phase onto the provinces they've raided to try to kill their thugs or whatever they're raiding with. And so it's easy to kit a golem to with the specific gear needed to kill whatever thing that they're raiding with. And I find that's the best use of golems. In this war, in this case, I don't need golems to go and thug raid his provinces. And I mean, I could, if I had them, I could use them to do that. But it is not strictly necessary in this war, given that I have other tools like just smaller armies that I can use for raiding. So that being said, so in other words, in this particular playthrough, in this game, golems did not play, I made some, but I did not have a big army of golems going around. Unlike, I guess, what people, expected me in the game, that were surprised I didn't have that many. I did not go for as many golems because I was always trying to save up astral for some late game stuff. In the end, the late game stuff didn't pan out anyways, so maybe I should have built the golems, but whatever, I didn't. So sorry, that was a big omission from the last episode. I'm sure I'll get a million comments about it, but yes, golems. Okay, let's get back to our research paths, okay? I'm leaving sort of the best for last in some sense, so let's talk about Thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy, you definitely want to get to 5 for Soul Slay, and obviously you need to have Evocation 6 for Mind Hunt. So Mind Hunt, now in this particular battle, I was fighting Micklin, and Micklin does have some Astral Mages, so Mind Hunt is not he's not going to be as effective. Although, yeah, so because my guys can get feeble-minded, but it does shut down his ability to kind of raid me with little groups of sacreds. So it would be easy for Micklin to get a small bunch of sacreds with a priest and raid me, but he now has to bring an astral mage, otherwise he's going to get mind hunted. So that is definitely a path. And that's only level 5 and level 6 in Evocation, so it's not hard to aim for in the mid-game. Thaumaturgy 6 gets us Enslave Mind, which is just better than Soulslay because you get the unit instead of just killing it, so that is totally worth it. The rest of these spells are, in my particular case, not particularly relevant. If you end up fighting a big death nation with a lot of undead, then Witherbones is certainly going to be a target, and in that case, you're definitely going to want to go up Enchantment to get your Liches up, and then Thaumaturgy to make sure you have Witherbones. But that's a pretty specific case that we're not dealing with. Do we need to go further down Thaumaturgy in the mid-game? I don't think so. So later down, what else do we have? Charm is an amazing spell, but we don't really have high nature mages, nor nature mages that we tend to communion up. We're using our nature mages to do buffs, and then that's pretty much it. Now, we actually did find in this game, we have this province that recruits these enchanters, which are nature 2 astral mages. They're mostly doing my buffs. So if you're like Man or something like that, or any nation that has good nature mages, definitely Thaumaturgy would be one of your priorities. But again, we're thinking about this. We're not just doing like a general guide to the mid-game. We're talking about Tienchi's mid-game. And Tienchi does not really need Charm because you don't have mages that are really going to cast it. And similarly, there's nothing else down here that is crucial for our particular mid-game. Now, if I was playing against Bandar Log later on, if I was involved in a big war against Bandar Log, I would definitely consider going down here to get Beast Mastery, which is just brutal against nations that rely on animals. So if you did do that, then that would give you the opportunity to pick up a few nice globals like Galegate, which is the air gem generator. Vengeful Water is a hilarious defensive global, which is really nice to put up. You could make the case that Purgatory could be useful if you were being invaded by evil undead things. Dark Skies for morale, like these are nice things that you could go for. If you happen to need to go for these particular spells, but I don't think in general you're going to need this. I certainly didn't need them in my game in the mid game. So Thaumaturgy you can probably reliably just park at 6. Okay, let's talk about Evocation. You're gonna go to Evocation 6 for Mind Hunt anyways. All right. Celestial Chastisement is also an amazing spell, by the way. I've talked about it earlier in the introduction. Now, what about the rest of Evocation? You can see here that I'm going down to Evocation 9. Why is that? Well, there are a few things. So first of all, in terms of other really good spells, Evocation 7 and 8 is all about battlefield spells that kind of kill a lot of units. However, I think that as Tianchi, we're humans and we're relying on our own large armies, and so probably like Firestorm is like a spell like Firestorm. You don't have any built-in fire resistance on our human troops anyways. So you're like basically killing as many of their guys as your guys. Maybe you're assuming you have better battlefield buffs. Maybe you have Master Gen, they don't. You have Fire Fen, they don't. In that case, sure. But otherwise, it's not really super necessary. A few things that do come into play here are Murdering Winter and then Flames from the Sky. That's I'm going to do a whole episode, I think, just talking about Flames from the Sky, because that is a major aspect of the late game. To tell you the truth, the reason I wanted to go for Evocation 9 is because I wanted to try to put up this global Celestial Rainbow. And I did put it up, And I didn't quite understand fully how it worked, and it turned out not to work how I thought it would. So let's talk about it right now. In the end, actually, Atlantis ends up putting it up, and it's super good for him. So if you read it, it says, first of all, it gives you a bunch of gold. In this game, it gave me about 400 or 500 gold per turn, so that's not nothing. And then what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to push your scales to luck. And then once they are lucky, for each scale of luck, you get, or actually, if they are lucky, then for each scale of luck, you have that times 10% chance to block enemy spells. So it acts like one of those dome shield spells. They each have different percentage chance of blocking spells. So this one, if you had luck 3 in a province and you had that global up, then you would have a 30% chance to block all globals. This is everywhere in your dominion, right? Depending on the luck scale. So that is amazing. That shuts down so much raiding, because oftentimes when you're doing like a magic phase attack, you're counting on your guy. Like you got to make sure your guy's going to land there. If you have a 30% chance your guy's not going to land, that's really going to mess up your plans, especially if you're doing like multiple magic phases onto the same province because you're relying on like interlocking buffs or something like that. That completely ruins that. Not to mention it's great protection against flames from the sky because, that flames from the sky isn't free. It's 30 fire gems. If I have a 30% chance that it's just going to get resisted, doesn't feel great casting it. So this is amazing. The thing that I did not realize is that it cannot overcome misfortune scales. So it can cancel misfortune scales to bring my luck to neutral, but it cannot then push me into positive luck territory. So while it was running, it just gave me gold and canceled out my misfortune, but I never got the luck scales, and so I never got the benefit of the shield, which is too bad. I learned that, and now I won't rush for it in the future. But anyways, that's something that I learned. So I ended up prioritizing this earlier than I normally would. That being said, Murdering Winter and Flames from the Sky are an amazing thing to get. I just decided to do something a little bit different and to see how it would work out. And in the end, it wasn't super worth it. I've been saving the best for last because the two big paths that you typically max out first are Enchantment and Alteration. For nations like Tien, where you've got like nice chaff that you kind of want to make even better, and also chaff that you need to buff to make it better. So the trick is always deciding which one you're going to go for first. So first of all, both Alteration and Enchantment have resistances for us. Now, for some nations, you might need to use one or the other. So for example, in Enchantment, the path buffs its own resistance. So if you want air resistance, you need to have air mages. If you want frost resistance, you need water mages. If you want fire resistance, you need fire mages. In Alteration, it's the opposite. So earth gives you air resistance, water gives you fire resistance, and fire gives you water resistance. So that depends what mages you have access to. We're Tianchi, we don't care, we can cast everything. In our mid-game battle, did we need resistance buffs? Yes, because Miklin's Bless was like Thunder Weapons, Bark Skin, something. I forget. So he had Thunder Weapons. So we constantly had to be buffing Storm Air Resistance. Now, we have Earth Guys, so that's easy. So we were able to do, for a long time, just like lightning resistance here down in Alteration 5. That buffs a fairly wide area, so we only needed a couple guys to cast it. Now, we could have then gone down Alteration further, to get Ground Army. But we also have Air Mages, so it's no problem for us to go to Enchantment 8. So here are the notable spells. Okay, let's remind ourselves what we need in Enchantment and in Alteration. So in Enchantment, as Tien. Okay, this is specific to what we're going to do. Now, again, the thing is, Tien, this is what's kind of great about this nation, is it's such a, you can do everything, but that means you have the burden of choosing amongst all the things in the minions what are the important spells. Foul Vapors, we're not really going to be using that because it's going to kill our guys mostly just as much as it's going to kill the other guys. Okay, Heat from Hell and Grip of Winter. You can definitely use those, especially if your opponent... So Tien as a human, we're kind of neutral in terms of our scale preferences. If you're fighting an enemy that prefers hot temperatures or prefers cold temperatures, definitely consider putting this guy up. Our fatigue is not going to be an issue because by then you also have relief. So if you're going to be casting one of these, you're going to be casting relief. And our mages are relying on communion, so this is totally something you can do. Arrowfend, absolutely fantastic for us. God, there's so much. I'm realizing now that the episode, we're already on at more than 25 minutes, and there's so much to talk about. I'm going to end right now, mid-thought, and we're going to continue in another episode. We're going to keep talking about enchantment spells because there's so much to say. So I'll be right back. Let's end this episode. I'll talk to you in a minute. Take care.